How are you doing?
Good. Let's see.
Well, I'm gonna move some stuff.
Hey, Bunny.
Hi. Oh, who said?
Hi.
Hi.
We're working away here. Yeah. How was your trip?
We had a great time. It was doing that part of the Green River. There she
Okay.
is.
All right.
Sorry about that. I don't know. How does Zoom uninstall itself? I thought it installed forever. It wasn't.
Well, we're all having technical difficulties today. I did buy a new computer, and so I'm transferring information onto that computer, which is tying up both computers. So that's why I'm on my iPad. And I had to install Microsoft Teams this morning. So there you go. But we all made it. This is a good thing. Welcome to the October meeting of the Deschutes Public Library District Board. It's good to see everybody's faces. I'm glad we could all make it today. So our first order of business is minutes. So did people have a chance to review the minutes?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I sent something to Todd. Did you get that? For the September,
You can relate it to the board.
okay. Well, I don't have my exact verbiage. Do you have it there? I have to pull up my email to do it.
You said I suggest some verbiage for the minutes about August 11th.
Yeah,
You were suggesting the addition of the board discussed whether written statements from board members should be included in the minutes. After extensive discussion, it was decided that these should be included in the meeting minutes.
and then continue with Ann. On Ness move to approve the August 11th, 2021 minutes with the addition of Meow's written comments from the July board meeting to be attached. Claridge seconded, motion carried unanimously. I think, it should reflect, we did have a good discussion on that.
I don't, based on my recollection, that wasn't the discussion. The discussion was specific to your comments at that meeting. Not a blanket statement that all written comments would always be included. And I think the move to record all the meetings was a big part of that discussion so that people could go to the actual meeting record itself and see what was discussed.
I think it was.
That's what I remember.
Yeah,
I
because I
thought
would not
Ann-
have voted for a blanket statement like that, because as we had discussed at that earlier meeting, based on the way this board has always done business and on just general good practices for boards, I think our real role is to work together as a board and to come together and to discuss things and debate together at the meetings, not to prepare written statements. There's just a lot that's problematic about that, as we discussed earlier. And we really devoted quite a bit of time to that. And I believe that those August I believe that discussion was recorded, wasn't it, Todd?
You're muted.
Sorry, yes, July, August, and September are all recorded and posted on our board website.
Mhm. And I
Right.
believe what it turned into was a discussion because Ann and Malkin actually brought up what you just repeated, saying that you didn't think that written statements really, that the written statements actually hindered conversation. And I think the point that Cynthia and Ness and I agreed on was that you could have some concerns, and if you put them in writing, we could put them into the minutes if we presented it to the board in writing. If we verbalize them, then of course it's verbal, it's in the recording. But if we do have statements or concerns that we had in writing that we wanted to present to the board for further discussion at some time, then they could be included as a submission from a board member. I don't think a written statement or written concerns hinders conversation. I think it stimulates it and allows us to have a record, go back. And I, for one, like to read what other people have thought and written down, so that I can really think about it for the next couple of weeks, and then a future meeting, have a good discussion on it.
Wouldn't that be repetitive though, if at the meeting you have written comments and we discuss it, and then you go and put it in those minutes, and then you discuss it again the next time? It seems to me we're discussing the same thing over and over.
No, the idea is not that it disrupts the meeting and you have to discuss it right then and there. It puts it into the written record so that we have something in writing before us, and the public can see too, that these are concerns we have, and at some point we should discuss it. In the past, we've had concerns brought up, and then basically they never get discussed. We kind of hold them for our work session, but they don't necessarily come up in the work session. Time does have a way of erasing memory.
For parliamentary procedure, Ray, do you want to suggest a motion to add this to the minutes?
No, because I think we had discussed it, and that's what we agreed to last time.
I don't.
Well, if you're,
One thing I would
if you want
suggest,
to
though-
amend the minutes, you will have to make the motion. If you want this statement added to the minutes, you will have to make a motion to amend the minutes.
Doesn't Todd amend the minutes?
No,
And the board has
it's
to
done by,
agree
it's
to the-
done by
when
a
he
motion
writes,
of
or
the
he doesn't?
board.
The board doesn't write the minutes, Todd does. If he writes the
Right.
minutes with those suggestions in it, in the past, what we've always done is we say, well, here's a suggestion for changes in the minutes, regardless of where they are. He writes them, we look at them and we say, yeah, we agree to this, or we don't. We don't need a motion to do that.
Well, you're right, we need a motion. Right now, we need some kind of motion to approve the September minutes. And so that's one. We should have one of those. And if you want to have an addition to that, you can also request your addition to this.
Mhm.
But the board always approves the minutes. Any
Right.
amendments to the minutes comes through the board. I don't have the authority to do that.
Yeah, but in the past, you've sent the minutes to us at least a week ahead of time, saying, are there any changes? We send you the changes, and you send them back to the board, and they're in the minutes for us to either approve or not approve at that point.
Right, so
We haven't had to go into a meeting that says, I changed the minutes. I would suggest changing the minutes now and make a motion for it. I did send it to you several days ago.
You sent it to me yesterday.
Mhm.
So just a reminder of what happens is I post the minutes into the board packet at that point. I don't do anything with it at that point. It's the final version for the board to approve. So this is the final version. I'm not debating whether or not we can put your comment in. The board has to decide that. I can't decide it. I don't have that authority.
Well, it's all right with me.
So-
I mean, if Ann is very much set against having that in there, that's fine. What I might suggest, though, is that on our agenda, on other boards that I sit on and have sat on, we do have a section called good of the order. And that's the point at which items that are not on the agenda can be brought up and either discussed there or put on a future agenda. So good of the order allows us to have flexibility in the agenda to bring up concerns and discussions that we want to either have then or more preferably in a future meeting.
Well, that's something that we can discuss whether people want to see that.
Otherwise, we can only do what's on the agenda, and the agenda is set by Todd and the president.
Right,
And-
and people can request agenda items to be placed on the agenda. That's part of our board operating policies, that
Right.
anyone can suggest agenda items for inclusion.
But often during our discussions, people start thinking about more in depth about a specific item we're discussing. Inappropriate at that point to digress from the main point of the agenda, but putting it into good of the order, for the good of the order. It's a placeholder.
Well, that's something that we can discuss, whether people want to see that as part of the regular meeting. I mean, I don't think anybody's had any constraints on bringing things up that we ought to discuss more fully. But in a meeting like today, where we have a full agenda, I mean, it's, we need to get through the items that we've got in front of us, obviously, today. And, but I mean, you know, that's something that the board can decide for sure, whether they want to see that. I think we've always made accommodation or tried to. I mean, I don't remember any instance where something that somebody wanted to discuss wasn't discussed, but you know, it may have been put off to a work session, or it might have been put off to a later meeting, but that also allows the board to be more prepared for the discussion.
But it seems to me that if Todd makes the agenda, but a board member can add something to that agenda, then that's fair. That should be discussed at that meeting. Then we make some decision, whatever it might be, and then we move on to the next month. I absolutely do not want something to be included and we keep rehashing the hash.
Any objection to having a section for good of the order?
Well, I think let's have a more reasoned discussion about this, you know, maybe at the work session, and see whether it's something that the board wants to include, or how they want to deal with new items of business that board members want to propose outside of the rules that we already have.
It's just a placeholder for topics that do come up during our conversation. I mean, a
Well, the
placeholder,
board can decide whether or not that they want to have that placeholder.
yeah, that's what I'm asking for. We should have a placeholder so that we don't have to digress from the agenda and everybody feels like their time is being wasted. But it also gives people time to think about the topic and the
Right.
issue. But it does put it in there on the minutes that we can go back to and say, hey, we did discuss this, we put it into good of the order. Maybe we should have it on the agenda,
Okay,
right? I mean, it's a placeholder.
I'm
okay,
just-
well, I
that's-
mean, getting back to the
I have no problem if you,
topic
I
at
mean,
hand.
if you feel
we
like
can-
you don't want to include the, my suggestions, that's all right. I was just trying to reflect what I thought was actually said at the meeting.
Okay, well, I can appreciate that, and it differs from my recollection, and as I said, you know, the recordings are designed so that people can go back and listen. So, I mean, I think that's kind of the ultimate goal of having people really be able to see that full discussion in context, so.
Mhm. Okay, well, I would throw my suggestion then to John, just a suggestion.
Okay,
But do we want to have a section just for good of the order in every meeting?
So I just throw in, based on our discussion, you're throwing out a new topic not related to the minutes.
Right.
That you may want to suggest that we have that on and that's go through the process that we have in our policies for getting new agenda items on.
Yeah.
Just point of process with our policies,
Okay,
Right.
so that we can move, so we should move on to the minutes
Right.
now.
So do I have a motion regarding the minutes?
I move to accept the minutes of the September 8th board meeting.
Do I hear a
Second.
second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Aye.
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 Okay, opposed? Ray, any abstentions? Okay, motion passes. Okay, next we have,
And we still have the minutes from the
Yeah.
oh,
September
excuse me, I got, derailed. I'm
September
sorry.
14th.
September
Yeah.
14th
and 20th.
and 20th. Do we want to consider both work session minutes together?
Sure, why not?
Okay, I would entertain a motion.
I make a motion that we accept the 2 work session meeting minutes that we had, September 14th and September 20th.
Do I hear a
second.
second?
I second.
Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
aye,
Opposed? Okay. All right, now we're on to the public comment section of the meeting. Are there any members of the public that would care to address the board? It's hard to see who's attending here.
We do not have anybody stepping forward.
Okay, all right, hearing no comments, we'll close that portion of the meeting, and we're on to our governance process policies. We're on to bond updates. So we've had a stretch of time here since our last meeting, so take it away, Greg.
Ready. Well, thank you, everyone. Good to see you. Happy Halloween coming up here. So, like you said, it has been a while since we met last. And so kind of go through a full overview of everything, just following the monthly report. And then, as you know, there's a number of action items that are kind of mentioned in the report and then separate summaries, et cetera. Generally, our overall project interaction, activity, meetings are all functioning well. A lot of activity on the project as we've been going through the whole conceptual design phase. As you guys know that you were engaged in some of those review sessions and discussions with our design team members. But that process and that function is going well. That's one of the first things we always have up front. Our communication levels, I think, are really performing well between ownership, between our design team, and the stakeholders. So very happy with how that element of the program is going. On schedule, project schedule, overall, we are tracking to the master development schedule and tracking on time to that. In my report, I mentioned that there wasn't a update to our master development schedule in the month of September. We have updated, because we're this late in October, done an update to the development schedule, just a few tweaks on some process of how we're going about some cost estimating next year. And that schedule was just recently published and is also available on the website. But for the most part, the summary schedule that you see in your board report is consistent with where we're at in the process. on design as well as on procurement activities. On the budget, no real activity, funding, largest payments. We had a little bit larger draw here in September, coming up with Miller Hall, our design team members on board and actively working away. So we started to see funding going out for them, but otherwise not a lot of changes on the budget. I'll say, kind of a look forward with our conceptual package. We'll be going through a full budget analysis and update over the next 2 months of November and December. We'll talk about the progress as we go through on that because we're updating all elements of the project budget at this time based on our conceptual design, which we'll go through again with the Miller Hall team here later in the agenda. But otherwise, no real activity that you would see on that budget report other than a little bit of expenditures. On procurement, we're going to talk about the CMGC process and the cost estimating process. And so I'll probably kind of cover those as I go through them individually. Other activities on the procurement side is we're actually getting ready to release the third CMGC RFP here Monday coming up. So which will be for the branch libraries. And so that'll be going out and we'll be coming back to the board anticipating January with a summary and an evaluation of that process for your review and consideration. So that one's moving along. We've got a couple others that we're working on, a commissioning agent, which is an owner agent and does testing inspection for us. So that'll be coming up in January as well. So just a little outlook into what's currently being worked on and what's on the horizon for your evaluation or sign off.
Greg, can I ask a quick question? I know you said this before, but a cost estimator, and tell me what that company or person does.
Yeah, so the independent cost estimator. So this is a firm that their business is to provide construction cost estimates, detailed cost estimates, as we go through the design process. So to take one little step back, there was a cost estimator hired through Henneberry, Eddy, and G4 Group at the development of the bond documentation. And that cost estimator worked under them and developed the original cost estimate for the bond to establish the $195 million. We're engaging a cost estimator to continue on the project to help us evaluate project costs as we go through the design process. In addition to our CMGC. And, the purpose is to really have a additional set of eyes and looking at it, looking at the detail, the ability to challenge costs that the CMGC may come up with is another party looking at it concurrently with us. And they're going to work side by side. We'll have reconciliation meetings with them. So they work as the owner's advisor. And in this case, they'll have a direct contract with DPL. They report solely to us, as owners, so that we have it's really a checks and balances on our costing.
Okay,
Does that make sense?
thanks.
Absolutely. So we'll go through those on all of the procurement elements. No activity really on the insurance side, but we are getting ready to actually put in place our DSIP, which is the district sponsored insurance program that will be used to cover the entire bond program from a liability standpoint. All of our contractors, all of the subcontractors will all enroll into this. So no action for you guys at this point. This will be going being prepared. Potentially in January, we'll present that to you at that point. So that's activity there. The entitlement process.
Greg,
Yes.
sorry to interrupt. Let me follow up on Bunny's question there. Will the cost estimator, what are they going to be working off of? The final drawing, design concepts, the design, or what?
So they'll work off of the same documents each time they do an estimate, because they'll do multiples, that the CMGC will price. So they're pricing the same information. And that's the information that Miller Hull will produce. So their current and their first task as we bring them on board is to budget our conceptual package. So the conceptual design package that you guys have seen and looked at, and we'll talk about more today, they'll use that set of documents. And, you know, we had a very high level conceptual design at the establishment of the bond and a price. So we're really verifying those original numbers and assumptions for each of the projects as it relates to our new and current design developed by the Miller Hull team. So that's the documents that they will use, but they'll always be issued the plans from the architect as we go forward.
And they're gonna, at every step, then every revision that occurs, then they will also do an estimation based on labor and materials costs, availability of materials.
Yes. Yeah, so as we go through, you know, the design process we've talked about, we go through concept, then schematic, then
Right.
design development, and into construction documents. And at each phase, we have planned updates to our cost estimates to verify we're tracking to the cost estimate based on the current level of design. So they'll do a cost estimate at each interval, verifying what not only the architect has drawn or anticipates to draw, but also what's happening in the real world market out there. What is going on with material costs? What's going on with labor costs? What's happening in the supply chain and how that may affect project costs. That's something that both our cost estimator and our CMGC will be evaluating. And we'll talk about those things, because there's a lot of impacts on what a project costs.
Right.
And those are all factors that they put into their cost estimate.
Yeah, my concern right now is that still being in the pandemic and knowing what's happening in supply lines and also the distribution lines that are not occurring now, that are being stagnant, that as time goes on, our costs will escalate. So at some point, we may find that our costs exceed our budget. We'll be seeing that as we go, and they'll bring that up to us before we reach that point.
Yes. We'll evaluate that at each interval to look at that. We include an escalation factor in our cost estimate. So of our normal design and estimating contingencies and construction contingencies, we have a line item strictly for cost escalation, which is that driving factor of, call it inflation, or the impacts of the market driving costs up. And so both our CMGCs and our cost estimator are going to be evaluating, hey, what are they seeing in the market today, over the next year and 2 years as we go through these projects? We'll be factoring that into our decision-making process. I think our design team very wisely looked at sizing our buildings initially here in alignment with what's happening in the real world market. They didn't automatically design to the maximum square footage. They were very, I'll say, conservative in designing us a building that fits our program without just using up all of the square footage. And we can adjust, that can flex, but it's to recognize that costs have escalated over the last year, and that often best way to control cost is to control the size of your building. And so they kind of did a little right sizing out of the chute with our two big buildings. You know, you can't change square footage on the renovations, but on the two big ones, we most certainly do that. So yes, they'll address all of those elements.
Right, because our principal costs will be on Central and Redmond.
Yes.
Everything else is a remodel. Footprints remain the same.
Yeah.
So we'll know right away how our costs are going.
Yeah.
Because what they're going to account for, the two buildings account for what percentage of our budget? Is it 80%?
Yeah. That's probably pretty close.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it definitely will. And like I said, we're already started into a major budget update based on this.
Good.
And it literally, we're looking at our soft cost, all of our FF&E costs, which all the furniture, fixtures, equipment, art, all of those.
Right.
Our construction cost estimates, our fees, city fees, you know, that's always a nice big number. And so all of those elements are being looked at so that we can really make sure that what we've got planned for is accurate, realistic, and make adjustments that we may need to. We'll do some horizontal moving, be from one project to the other, or we have a reserves, as you know, within the budget. And we haven't allocated those out to the budgets yet, of where we think they will be spent. And that's something we'll do after we've gone through this whole budget reconciliation. And that budget is what I would expect that we can talk about in December, at the December board meeting.
Oh, good. Okay. Yeah, we do have the 28 million in reserve.
Yeah.
Kind of for that.
And ultimately, I want to put that into the individual projects, so it's allocated appropriately to each of the 4 work packages. But until we go through this budget exercise, it's just guesswork. With budget exercise, it becomes, you know, very deliberate, and I'll tell you, hey, here's how I want to allocate funds and why. This is something I'll go through Todd and his team so that they're comfortable with that, and fully share with the team what the plan is and how that's going to be set up.
Good. Thank you.
Touching a little bit on the Central Library, the entitlement process, the text amendment, which is the first step in our land use approvals and annexation of land coming into the city, was submitted in October. That's into the city now. We actually just got our fee amounts today, so we're going to be getting their fees. That kind of completes our the process of to confirm that our application is complete. They tell you how much money and we fund it. So that's going on. There's no action right now. That'll be a process that goes on for 6 months roughly until about mid-April. And during that period, we'll have interaction with the city as they have questions, as they go through their process to approve the text amendment. And that just sets out the specific steps of how we will process our annexation documents. And those documents, along with our site plan and site improvement permit for Central, will be developed over the next 4 months and be starting to submit into the city in the beginning of March. And there's probably half a dozen to 10 different elements of that, traffic reports and civil plans, street improvement plans, et cetera, that all make up a large package of a submittal. So that's in process now and moving forward. We'll talk about the property line adjustment and the ODOT agreement. Those are both things that you guys have in front of you today for action items. And I'll come back to them. City of Redmond, we've had just some good conversations with them. We met again with the Downtown Urban Renewal Advisory Committee for the City of Redmond there, and just gave them an update of our progress on design in the conceptual package and what we were planning. They're very supportive of that, very supportive of the project moving forward. Don't really have any big action items or news to report. It's really not a lot there from the city standpoint. We're just going through the normal process of getting our designs developed and then go in for plan check. On design, like said, you're going to go through the conceptual design. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that because Miller Hall will take you through all of that aspect later. So I thought I'd jump into the action items. So on the central library is the property line adjustment. And we want to do the main action item is to adjust the property line between the Brown Rigs and DPL's property along what would be the kind of westerly side of the property where the shape of that property was triangular. And so first question was, the documents, were you able to understand how that property line was changing? I have the site plan that shows that. Would that help to bring that up?
Yes.
Let me share my screen. Can everybody see that okay?
Yes.
So, you know what,
Can you rotate it?
that's what I was gonna see. Let me rotate it real easy. Sometimes you bring them up and
Yeah. Well, okay, I guess that'll work.
how's that? It did rotate.
It did.
Oh, well done.
All right, technology worked. So
No, you
Highway
worked.
20 coming down here along, and then this is, our triangular shaped piece of property. This is the main piece of property here where the new library building is going. Roble Road, that will ultimately be all the way over. And
Oh,
then
wait, I'm seeing your arrow way up the top of the screen. For some reason, not on the map.
no,
Looks good to me. I see it.
Yeah, I do too.
okay.
I can see it too.
It's kind of right there. I'm swirling it, Ray, right on the property where the central library would be. Let me
Oh, wait,
zoom in a little bit more here.
my mouse is interfering with your,
Can you look in your paper packet, Ray?
yeah,
Is
oh, I
this
see yours
map
in
was
white,
in-
okay.
You see me swirling there? Yeah.
Yeah, I see yours is different now. Okay, yours is hand.
Yeah.
Okay,
So our property as it exists today has this long, straight edge here. And it comes up to this point, right? Which is colored in purple. If you guys see that.
Yes.
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 Mm-hmm.
And then, so the proposal is to transfer the land that is in purple to the Brown Rigs and to transfer the land that is in blue to DPL.
Okay.
Mhm.
And so the property line, just becomes a little bit more squared off.
Right.
And what it does, it makes both properties more usable and functionable. This is becoming a piece of land that just was getting so narrow, you couldn't do anything with it. And by moving the property line here, it allows us to now have all of this as frontage over here. And a piece of land that was going to be on the opposite side of the street that would have been our property to maintain now will become part of Brown Rig. So the purple becomes Brown Rig property and the blue becomes DPL property.
Right.
Change in square footage is an exact swap. There's no changes in quantity of land or anything but it lines here. So this is a property line adjustment that O.B. Riley transfer parcel. That's the Brown Rig family property name. It is that they have asked that we execute an agreement saying that we will prepare and process this document and that both parties agree. And that's the approval today, is for your approval for Todd to execute that agreement that says that we will prepare and process these documents and that both parties agree to this property line adjustment. The actual processing of the documents is something that we'll do as part of all of our land use approvals.
So Greg, does Brown Rig Trust own all the property to the south and west? And also that section to the east, to the yeah, south and west of us?
Yeah, so I'm gonna, if you can follow my cursor, they own almost all of it, Ray. So their property line goes up along Highway 20, back here. This land up here where I'm swirling is the church land. This area here is the school. So Brown Rigs comes down all the way around here. So it's this big lot. Now, carved out of that is property owned by the Marshalls, which is a kind of a rectangle that goes right here, middle. But the Brown Rigs own everything around them.
And so, Greg, the Roball Road goes through the middle of our property.
Yes,
It will.
yeah,
Okay.
that's
the
what we'll be
extension.
constructing.
Okay.
And it'll go across
Yeah.
the Brown Rigs also then.
Yeah, it ultimately will go across Brown Rigs, and it's actually cutting a little bit of the Marshall property right on this edge.
Yeah.
But it goes over, and that's where it makes its future connection to O.B. Riley. So this portion will be developed, of the road will be developed when they develop that property.
Oh, so that's not part of ODOT's plan to develop it at the same time while they're doing the one on the, across our property, is that correct?
We actually build this road.
Okay,
And Britta, and actually there's a road right here called Jameson
mhm,
that will construct, and then we will dedicate that to the city.
oh, I see.
And they'll become city streets. What ODOT is doing is they'll build the roundabout,
Roundabout,
which is currently a signalized intersection, but as part of their whole Highway 20 improvements, they're widening the highway and building 4 roundabouts have been talked about. You can see this one here at Roll, one down here,
mhm,
and at Cooley, and then there's 2 more that they're planning further on down Highway 20 as part of their big project. So yeah, their work will be to create the roundabout and the connection that we will connect our street to, where our work will join.
So Greg, so DPL and then the other property owners, it's our responsibility financially to pay from the Robo Road from the roundabout over to the O.B. Riley connection, is that correct?
We don't have to pay for the connection in here. They will build that road independent. The owner, whoever develops that property,
I see.
will pay for the roads that we develop within the
Okay.
DPL property. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Included in our budget in the bond funds.
Okay, thank you.
So how far does Robo Road go under our construction?
It'll go to our property line. We'll build our property edge here
Okay,
and we'll build over to there. It's likely that we probably wouldn't open this dead end road unless we use it. You know, part of our design includes a drive or the parking lot on this side.
mhm.
And so there'll be, you know, we'll want to make sure that we've got ample access in and out of that. But at some point they'll barricade off that street so it's not a dead end street. But that's, you know, at the point that we dedicate it to the city and the city takes control of it, they will also decide exactly how they want to stop, because the road would end up here at this point and then be picked up by, call it the Brown Rigs or their developer in the future.
Okay, so let me get it straight. Robo Road will end at the end of our property line to the west.
Yes.
Okay,
It seems like a real common sense swap to me, getting rid of virtually unusable land and gaining us more usable land. So it seems like it makes sense to me.
I agree.
Yeah, I do too. That seems
So
like a
that's-
no-brainer.
Yeah. So I think action for your guys' part is approval to authorize Todd to enter into the agreement. The agreement was drafted by Brooks Resources, deChase, Miksis, and legal counsel. So we've vetted all the way through it, and council has approved it. So it's ready for execution by both parties, pending your approvals.
Okay. Well,
You
I'd
said-
entertain a motion, or if anyone's ready to proceed.
let me clarify. Greg, you just said council has approved it, so city
Yes.
council has approved it?
No,
No,
legal
no.
counsel, city council.
Legal council has.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
one of the
city
steps-
doesn't have any, the city will process this,
Uh-huh.
but it'll go through staff. There's just a processing.
Good, thank you.
Mhm.
Do I hear a motion from anyone? Are people ready to
I'll
proceed?
make, I'll make a motion that we, for the lot line adjustment agreement, not exactly sure how to word this. Do you need more than that?
If you, probably the best would be to authorize the library director to
Okay,
enter into the lot line adjustment agreement and sign
Okay.
it.
okay. I move that the library director works out the lot line adjustment agreement.
You authorize him to take action on it. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, do I hear a second?
A second.
Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes.
So the next item up on is our CMGC, which is our construction manager, general contractor for work packages 1 and 2. So work package 1, again, is the central library. And I'm going to stop sharing on this.
Yeah.
And then work package 2 is the Redmond library. So it's just, I know I put it in the summary there if you got a chance to read. But we went out, issued those RFPs in August for both of those, received proposals in September, went through an evaluation process throughout the month of September, and got to a final evaluation and ranking of both of the 2 work packages. They were independent, separate RFPs that we went through as we did that process. And that came to a completion in early October, at which time. And so today, what's in front of you is, what we're going to be awarding is the award of the contract to the highest ranked finalists for work package 1 and work package 2. We would be entering into a contract with them. The initial contract amount would be just for their pre-construction services, which they quoted it as through part of the RFP process. And then in the future, this is like in a year to a year and a half from now, we would be coming back to you with the approval for the award of the guaranteed maximum price, which is also referred to as GMP. That's for the total cost of construction work. Now, we will go through that in steps on the central library, because we'll do an initial IGMP for all of the site improvement work, and then a final one for the building and all of its main components in order to maintain our schedule. So today, again, it's to approval of the selection of the top ranked finalist and authorization for Todd to execute the contract with the CMGC for both work package 1 and work package 2. So I, included the evaluation documents. I don't know if you would like me to pull them up on screen. I know they were in your board packets. As we went through, with the CMGC work package 1 for Central Library, we had 4 firms or teams propose on that. And the top ranked firm out of that group of 4 was Kirby Nagelhout Construction Company. They're a local general contractor based here in Bend, Oregon. So some of you may be familiar with them or may have seen their signs out and about the community, as they've been around here a long time.
Well, I believe, didn't they construct the downtown Bend Library?
They did.
Well, that was when Kirby was the owner of Kirby Nagelhout. So the company has changed hands and management, but kept the Kirby Nagelhout name.
Right.
So I would say it's not exactly, I wouldn't say it's the same company.
Well, 25 years later, yeah.
Right.
Kirby
Most of-
Nagelhout, though, I think was they were the construction company on the remodel or the Redmond Library, the original. Is that
They were.
correct, Todd?
That's correct.
They were, and again, that was over 25 years ago, but yes.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think with all companies, they have, companies go on for a long period of time and they have attrition as it goes through that process. And Kirby himself is no longer with the company and unfortunately no longer with us. But I think that as a company, they're a very strong community member of the contracting community and doing business here throughout all of Central Oregon. And actually they've got a couple offices around Oregon.
Mhm.
So I don't know if there's particular questions that you guys have about the rankings or the evaluation forms and anything there that I could address. It's laid out very much like what you saw with the architect selection process and evaluation process. We went through very similar. We had a 9-person evaluation team go through to evaluate all of the proposals, the interviews. And that all culminates into their scores there. So we're scoring and evaluating. It's really ultimately the average of 9 different people review, which was really good. We had 2 members of our architectural team join the evaluation team to get their perspective, because they're a key team member and understanding of how they would work with the CMGC, as well as team members from deChase, Miksis, and DPL were the evaluation team.
Okay.
The
Are there any questions for Greg?
Yeah, I've got a few questions.
mhm.
On approach, the 8.4, what is that? What did you evaluate there? What were you looking for under approach? How did they ask? What does approach actually mean?
So within the RFP and in their proposals, it was a much more broadly defined or detailedly defined question and evaluation element. So approach is how they manage and run the project, what kind of systems they use to manage their work, you know, whether it has to do with their subcontracting, how they procure sub bids and manage their subcontractors, their scheduling, their budget control systems, and all of the systems that they use to manage the budget and payments and our money. Down to how do they handle RFIs, submittals, shop drawings, interaction with the design team and the ownership team. So that's what was meant by approach. It probably had about 10 subcategories: safety, those types of elements, right?
Mhm.
The things that you want to think about if you say, okay, Mr. General Contractor, how will you execute your job? That's what's covered there.
Right. So it's really looking at how well do they function as a construction company?
Yes.
Since they don't do all the work, they have to subcontract, they have to get supplies, everything else, and control their budget.
Yeah.
And also, I suppose, work with the architect.
Yeah.
I was in there as one of how they approach a CMGC.
Yeah. That's one of, you know, when we chose the CMGC method, is it's bringing on the contractor early to engage in discussion with the architect about systems they're looking at using, how they're going to go together. The CMGC supporting the architect in constructability reviews, supporting them in costing of systems, availability of materials. You know, what's happening in the current market today as far as what can we get, what's delayed, what's the right system. You know, we'll talk about structural steel frames, we'll talk about wood frames, different skins. So we'll get their input early on in that process.
So that was part of the evaluation on approach.
Yeah, of how they've done it on other projects.
So on the, oh, excuse me, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
So then on the interviews, you also went back and asked other architectural firms how well they actually work with the particular contractors,
We did.
rather than just owners.
Right. Yeah. Through the references that they gave us, you know, as part of the response to the RFP, we requested so many references of similar projects of type and complexity and size that we could go back and talk to. And so we reached out to their references that was a mixture of architects, owners reps that we could talk to on that and what their experience was.
Great. What do you mean by schedule and cost control?
That was very specific about those two elements. You know, the approach is one piece, but we had them expand more on those two, and we put additional weight into the evaluation of how they really manage those elements. I think we probably, under the approach, while you talk about all those aspects, we scored them for their systems, for scheduling and costs separately. Such major key elements.
One of the major things that we're concerned with.
Yes.
And then on 8.6, your CMGC percent of costs of the work.
Yes. So that's their fee that they will charge on the project. And
Oh,
that
for the
was,
total.
yeah. So their fee, so, you know, within the GMP, the total project cost on a project, you've got a whole bunch of subcontractor costs, which probably will make up 90% or so of the total project cost. Money that's going to all the different subcontractors.
Right.
And then the general contractor has certain costs. So they have the cost of their supervision, all of their staffing, which though that's all of the people they gave us their hourly rates on. And so they'll have what's called general conditions, and that's the cost of them managing the work. And it's predominantly labor cost. It's the project manager, the superintendent, all their assistants, and the staffing that they'll have on there. And then they have a cost for their profit and overhead, their fee. And that's what this is. So those fees were competitively priced, where everything else will be negotiated on them establishing the GMP on an open book basis.
Okay. So let me just get it straight then. That fee that they're charging is independent of their total GMP
It will be included in,
in the GMP.
yes.
Yeah, but it's independent of what they come up with as a final
No,
cost.
it's actually driven by a percentage. On the second page of the evaluation form,
Uh-huh.
it actually shows you what that percentage is. If you look at page 2 of that evaluation form, it shows you
Right.
actual dollars for what their pre-construction services are. And then a percentage for their fee.
Okay, so that's a 2.15.
Yes. And that percentage will be calculated. So we're agreeing today with them, that's the fee that we're going to pay them based
Mhm.
on the total cost of the work.
Right.
We did, for comparisons, we used our budget, what is the order of magnitude of that fee.
Uh-huh.
So you can see, you know, for that, based on our budget, it's about a $1.7 million number that it is.
Yeah, it's a hefty number for a construction company.
It is. But the fees are actually, as you can see, they were all in the generally low 2%, which is where we would expect to see them.
Right.
Where from 2 to 4% is not surprising.
Mhm.
And I think we got really good competitive fees on this. So that was real, you know, just knowing where the market is at, it's driving fees up and higher as people get busier and they don't need as much work because they got a lot, then they start to charge more. And
Yeah.
I think we still got really good fees.
Yeah, I was very pleased to see that.
Yeah.
I was thinking they were going to just go ahead and do what they do for everybody else. If you want me to work, I'm going to charge you the max.
Exactly.
Yeah, so that worked out well.
Yeah, and you can see the hourly rate schedule there. That's on that same page. That's the rate for their staff that they will use in doing pre-construction work and construction work.
Mhm.
And ultimately, when we get to setting our GMP, we'll actually take the general conditions, the cost of their work, to a fixed fee number.
Yeah,
It's based on these rates and then based on a final staffing plan. And with their RFP, we required that they give us a staffing plan of how many people are they going to put on the job and what are their roles and who are the individuals. And we walked through that again with them during the interviews. And we did interviews this time virtually, but I think they were very successful. So, you know, during those interviews, we gave them a list of questions that we wanted them to expand on and talk about in the interviews, and to bring their teams, all their key people that we would interface with in there, so that we sat and talked with the project superintendents, we talked with the project managers. You know, you always have the owners and the business development people in there doing the selling.
right.
It's so important to get to know the people that you're going to work with. And all of the teams participated that we did to the interviews, all did a really good job.
Yeah,
And we are very happy with the team that is before you today, Kirby Nagelhout. And you'll see that for both Work Package 1 and Work Package 2, they are the top ranked finalists on both of them. And I think that they put together 2 independent teams, but with a certain amount of, you know, overlap at a more senior level and throughout the pre-construction phase to really bridge over the 2 independent teams so that they're both focused on the specific projects, but we're getting a lot of synergy of knowledge, common knowledge between the two. And I think, you know, that came out through the evaluation process and the evaluation scores that they ended up being top ranked on both of them. And talked about, is there any concerns about that? You know, it was open to, and we told the bidders up front, they asked, and we said, whoever, you know, top rank could be same team or different teams. It goes even for the other future work. But I think that there will be some good synergies behind that with our design team and them to really focus on these two buildings.
So there are two teams. Some of the management will be on both. Their subcontractors will have to be totally different on the two projects.
They will bid them. They have to bid each project independently.
Right.
When GC puts it out, they will be bid independently. They somewhat occur at different times, but I do know that, you know, one of the things will be for things that are of common in our design process where we get some synergies there. If there's some major purchases of materials, I think we see these buildings being, and you'll see this in the design discussion, a little bit different structural type systems between the two different buildings. So not necessarily be where we can buy two projects together, but we'll know what people's workloads are. Both of these are big projects and
Yeah.
for our community and for our subcontractors. And, you know, I think that's one of the things that Kirby Nagelhout really demonstrated was their engagement with the local subcontractor community, knowing their strengths and weaknesses and how we can capitalize that on our two largest projects. And while they have independent project teams, those teams are going to be communicating and knowing how subs are doing, how well they're staffed to be able, so that we don't overstretch anyone, how we can break up our work to really attract as many opportunities to our subcontractor community for both projects.
Yeah, because
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. To have that coordination and that knowledge to be able to get the best subs for each job and maybe adjust work a little bit so that that can happen.
Yeah.
Well, they're going to have
In
to.
this market to overload them if you're not careful. You're saying,
Right.
They're going to have to contract with their subs well before the construction actually starts. The subs usually contract for future work, so they can put it on their schedules. But I notice here that the GMP, they're going to have to come back with a GMP for the central library somewhere between January and March of 23, and the Redmond out to just into April. So about half a month difference between the two GMPs. There's no problem with that, you think?
No, they, you know, from a workload standpoint, there won't be. I think actually having them priced relatively close to each other helps build that energy and excitement about the projects, knowing what's going on and what the workload is going to be, how it's going to be spread between the subs. On Central, we will do a site work GMP this next fall. That'll come in there. I don't know that I broke that out separately on our
I don't see that.
schedule. Yeah, it's something that in our detail schedule I've broken out where we want to get all of our site work and street improvements and utility work going well in advance of our building. It's something that is set up with our design team and actually allows us to about do anywhere from 4 to 6 months worth of work in advance of having our building permit. So really one of those things that helps us on our schedule. So that'll come forward and I'll keep you updated as we progress through that, but that'll be next fall.
Let me just ask you, Did Griffin Construction put in a bid at all?
They did not for these two. They attended our information meeting, and they're interested, I believe, in, they'll probably pursue the branches that's going to be coming out. And I wouldn't be surprised that they would pursue downtown based on, what conversations I had with them in the past.
Good, thank you.
Yeah.
Does anyone else have any additional questions for Greg?
No,
Okay. I would entertain a motion.
And I just, in your chat, I put a sample motion in case somebody wants to use that.
To make one.
Huh.
Let's see.
I'll go ahead. And I'm going to read your words, Todd.
Okay,
I move to award the Deschutes Public Library Construction Manager General Contractor contract for the Central Library and the Redmond Library, Work Package 1 and Work Package 2, to Kirby, how do you say, Nagelhout Construction Company, and authorize the library director to sign the finalized contract in the amount of more than $350,000 for pre-construction fees and all associated documents.
It should be no more than, correct?
No more than.
Yes.
and let me just point out that because we don't have our schematic designs yet, we didn't want to put you in a position of signing a contract without knowing what you're paying for. So I talked with our legal counsel, and she recommends that you authorize for the pre-construction fees, and then at the point that we are ready to move on to the next step, we'll come back to you with authorization.
Okay.
Excellent.
Okay. Do I hear a second on the motion?
I'll second.
Oh, go
No,
ahead.
Bunny can second.
No, go ahead.
No, Bunny. Ladies first.
Okay, I'll second.
You're all ladies. Wait.
Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. The motion passes.
All righty.
Great.
So the next one is our RFP for the independent cost estimator for cost estimating services, which we spoke about already as we've kind of gone through the meeting here. And so concurrently with going through the RFP process for the two CMGCs, we did the RFP for the cost estimator. And that there was a separate summary and evaluation document there. We had 4 firms submit proposals for it. 2 of the firms are, I'd call them more small, local, regional, based out of the Portland area. And actually both of them have satellite offices here in the Central Oregon, one in Redmond, one in Bend. And then 2 of the larger firms also competed, and those were national based firms that, pursue this type of work around the country, just larger. So it's a good mix of companies that their sole business is the independent cost estimating services. They provide it for a lot of municipalities, public institutions like the district, where they do a lot of their work basis. So we went through a very similar evaluation process based on our RFP. It had a high point value for price in this case. And then there was a fairly significant point value for schedule, which was, can they meet our timelines for our cost estimating demands? And across, with all 7 properties at some point needing, multiple cost estimates, they'll probably put together, really, when you look at it, 30 plus cost estimates over the life of the project for all 7 properties, being the 4 branches, downtown Bend, and then the 2 new ones, Redmond and Central. So being able to meet our schedule demands was important to us on top of what their fees were going to be. The experience and qualifications were what we expected. A lot of depth of experience in bond programs, in public programs like this, whether it be for school districts or cities or other library districts. And so they had a good rounded mix of experience and knowledge there. Ultimately, like I said, the points or their fees were heavily weighted in this RFP. And so the JLD Cost Consulting is the highest ranked and is the firm that we're recommending proceeding with to engage. And they are based out of the Portland area with a office here in Bend. And for the most part, they don't do anything out on the job site. They work with us in preparing documents and meeting with us and engaging with us. So location was not as a big of a criteria. Knowledge of the Central Oregon construction market was, and that's something that most of the firms have had good experience with all of the local cities, county agencies, and ODOT and school districts, et cetera. So any questions about them?
There's a, go ahead, somebody else had a question?
No,
There's a huge difference in the costs here.
Yeah, between JLD and ACC, it's actually quite close.
Right.
And then when you look at Hill and RLB, they're quite a bit higher. So Hill and RLB are the larger national firms. And when you look at their hourly rates, you can see that their hourly rates are higher than what JLD and ACC is.
mhm,
You know, I think that just has to do with their the type of business that they are, in that they're probably just the size of their operations runs at a higher rate there. That's really the main difference between them. Whereas with JLD and ACC, they're really good cost consultants here, but they're, 10-person firms. They have a small overhead. They don't carry, when you think of like Hill, that's I don't know how many thousands of employees they have around, right?
Yeah.
They're a very large company.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
know.
So I think that's probably the biggest difference between them. You could see it in just how in their proposals, Hill and RB could show you projects they've estimated around the country.
right,
Other offices is doing it. It's not the guys in the local office do it. They just are really showing you what they do as a large organization.
and I assume you checked references on both these firms as well, or all these firms as well,
Yeah,
or I mean, of the winning. of the
yeah, with
recommended firm.
JLD and ACC and, I think, we were very comfortable with them and with the award based on, we interviewed both JLD and ACC as well. We conducted in-person interviews with those or virtual interviews
Mhm,
and really understand who they are, how they go about developing their cost estimates and how they support us as owners, as our independent set of eyes and ears, right? Looking at job cost for us. So that was, the approach taken through that evaluation.
mhm. Yeah, I think I really like this idea of having an independent set of people also verifying costs so that we don't get surprised midway when it's too late to adjust.
Exactly. No, and that's there's really, one of their primary roles there is while we utilize the cost estimate from the CMGC, it's their estimate helps to verify, does it make sense? What do they,
Right.
they may see things that we miss or haven't anticipated. The other is, I think we will get a lot of value out of, they do lots and lots of estimates, see lots of projects. And so they're going to have ideas for cost cutting measures, value engineering. They'll become a source for us as in addition to just being a cost checker.
Right.
Will they do independent, their own estimations or cost analysis of the labor costs and material costs based upon
Yes.
design, independent of the contractor, the CMGC?
Yep. We keep them
So,
completely separate because we don't want either of them influenced by the other. So they prepare their estimates at the same time and they turn them into us at the same time. And then we do a reconciliation with them, right? We'll engage with our architect firm and them to talk about, okay, we're in a variance in this category, structural steel, you're at one price and you're at another. Why aren't we closer? They're never, but you want to look for anomalies. What's way
Right.
high, what's way low, and
Right.
try to figure out why. Did they anticipate something differently, or did one of them put it in at a really cheap cost? When is that realistic, or a really high cost, and is that realistic?
Right.
We'll use them in that role, and then after we do that reconciliation, we'll do a final budgeting by both of the firms. So that way then as we come out, so our concept budget is coming up, they'll each prepare a conceptual budget. We'll go through a review and reconciliation period where we'll review them jointly together and talk about them, and then have them finalize and make any adjustments that we think are necessary. And then we'll utilize that budget for our, project budget evaluation and moving forward. And that'll become our baseline.
So that's actually critical.
Yeah.
And so where is that expertise? Where is that in your criteria? Where would that fall under?
It's really, it lands in there. Look back here. So under experience, qualifications of proposal, and Central Oregon experience, those were really the categories when you look at that evaluation criteria that talks about what have they done, what types of projects have they estimated, what kind of systems do they use for estimating, how do they approach doing that takeoff and quantity surveys, and how do they collect their database of cost information, how do they keep it up current, when you talk about the cost estimator. So those two categories, 2 and 3, were all about how the types of projects they've done, the level of complexity of those, and then how they go about assembling their cost documents and maintaining their cost database so that we know that they've got a current and active cost database that they're utilizing for their cost estimates. And so that we had them provide us with samples of their work product of what a cost estimate would look like that they would produce for us. So we can see the level of information and detail. And it's set up to where we can talk about major systems with the design team. What's the structural system costing? What's the skin MEP systems, but then we can also talk about, well, how many yards of concrete have we got figured for the footings, and how many yards of concrete in the walls, or tons of steel or pieces. So there's a very highly detailed cost estimate that rolls into various categories that we can use as evaluation points. And one of the things, term that's used is target value design. And it's saying, hey, we want to design a skin that's worth $5 million. And all the components, it may be made up by 10 different subcontractors' works doing different pieces, but it's a skin. So they're able to share that information, and the CMGC will do very similar. We want them to align so that we're talking the same thing, we're comparing numbers, but it also gives our architect team a really good understanding of how their design is reflected in cost. They want to design us a facility that meets our budget and meets all of our goals, both in function, in aesthetics, and in cost. And so they're really good tools to communicate back to our design team. Hey, you're on target, or you're over budget, you're spending too much, or hey, costs have gone up and we've got to make adjustments, and where's the best place to make that adjustment. So that's the information they'll get out that we'll get from them. But Ray, your specific question, it was 2 and 3 that really told us about who they were.
So then the question is, if I look at Ryder, Bucknell,
Yeah.
on that, they scored 13. And JLD is 11.25. Is that a significant difference, or would you say not? Because the big difference between those two then becomes their price. And I'm wondering how big are, plus their schedule, 13.75 versus 12.5, which I would consider to be probably significant in points.
What are you saying, Ray? I'm confused.
I'm looking to say, in my mind, what you look for in a cost estimator is their ability to estimate. I mean, take into all the factors and independently verify what costs are, come up with that estimation, and that's in 2 and 3.
Right.
And Ryder scored 13.
Yeah, I think
And
that
JLD is 11.25. Is that a significant difference to 1.75? Because I also noticed that the scheduling for Bucknell is also about 1.25 difference. And that got higher, almost as high a rating as 2 and 3 combined. And then, of course, their fee, but their price. But I think all the things being equal, is it worth looking at Bucknell to negotiate a better price? Or are we not allowed to do that?
well, when we looked at that, you look at item 2, basically scored the same.
Right.
And the difference on the Oregon experience was the quantity of projects that RLB had. They had a lot of Central Oregon experience. JLD did not have as many quantity. They had good quality of projects, but not as many in quantity.
Oh, okay.
RLB actually had the most in quantity throughout. And so they ended up scoring higher. And that, again, these are the average scores of the group. The JLD scored higher on the scheduling, and Ryder actually scored lower on scheduling, mainly because of concerns that they weren't able to meet our schedule requirements.
Oh.
And so that's why they scored lower than JLD. And from, the things as we looked at how they responded back to our questions about scheduling and the timing of how long it would take them to assemble and meet our schedule requirements. That was one of the concerns on RLB.
Which is significant.
Yeah, it lowered that lowered it. Ultimately we do look at the total points. We look at those individual categories to see, is there any big anomalies, and do we know do we feel, and this comes out in a discussion that the evaluation team has, right? We see these results and we say, okay, is there anything there that jumps out at us that doesn't make sense? Are we comfortable that this final score that we're, it represents how we all felt? And in the end, it did. We didn't have any adjustments or concerns about saying, hey, we believe we should move forward with the top ranked finalist.
Where are they located?
Lake Oswego, I think it is, or is their office over in the Portland area. And then they have an office here in Bend.
And Greg, I'm gonna send a sample motion, and it's for no more than 275,000. And maybe you can just help out the board understand why it's saying 275 rather than the 225 that they put.
Yeah. And what that has to do is there's two things that I wanted to make adjustments to their to the final contract. Is we didn't have them include a budget for reimbursable. So you can see it just says the word cost in that line item. So I asked them to give me a budget for reimbursables, which isn't much. It's, $2,000-3,000. And then I asked them to give me a budget for additional meetings. And one of the things that we didn't have them include in their baseline proposals was a budget of time for them to attend our design meetings as we go through. And I think that's important. We have our CMGC sit in every design meeting and listen to the architect and hear what they're talking about so that they understand the vision, they understand the direction the architect's taking the project. They can help engage in that. And then when it comes time for them to prepare their cost estimates, they have something other than just a set of plans and specs.
Right.
They have knowledge of being a team member. And so I want to engage our cost estimator into a very similar program of joining our team meetings, our design meetings, listening and understanding, sharing their experiences with us. And so I will do that on an hourly basis, an allowance. Their contract is actually billed out on an hourly basis with a not to exceed number. So I told Todd that I hadn't figured out what that amount was, but that it would end up putting the contract between 250 and 275 when we finalize that. In order to carry an allowance, a separate line item for meeting attendance. And that's a meeting attendance over really about a 2.5-year process until we're done with downtown Bend.
Would it be valuable to have them come to some of the board meetings and talk to us on what they're seeing as the cost estimations as we go along? Because we'll get the other one from the CMGC and architects, and you will have it.
Yeah. Generally, I'll go through and provide all of those summaries. I would say that to the extent that you guys requested someone to attend, we would have them attend. But normally I'll try to give you those, any of the summaries if possible.
I'm just thinking if they're seeing things coming up, any problems, any concerns that they might have.
I think where we really have them advising is at our granular level, where they're advising us as your owner's representative and also advising the DPL management team and our design team. And that's partly why I like having them in these meetings, why I want to add this additional allowance to their contract, is to get that engagement and get that input where it's coming in to us, so that as we're actively working on the design and the program, that we've got all the knowledge out there, what their value is, what they can bring to the table at that point.
Right, and
So-
I would trust Greg to bring information to us if there were problems developing and or discrepancies. I mean, that's part of his managerial role, is to resolve those problems and to make the board aware.
I'm just thinking if the estimator comes in with a significant difference with the CMGC and estimating costs, do we want to hear that from the estimator also and what their concerns were and why they were doing that? You can summarize it for us, but I don't know if we should hear it directly from the horse's mouth.
I think that it should come from Greg. Greg, you're responsible for that. So if the cost estimator says there's an inconsistency, tell us about it and then we'll discuss it from there. I think we only need to hear it from Greg and not all the other people, the minions.
I would even add that, as we go through, we will have variations. It's inevitable that we will have those. But those are things that we'll work through on a daily basis as we're going through this process. If I saw something that was different between them, we're going to get to the root of what's causing that with the team. We're going to pull them together, go through it, figure that out. I would like to think that I would be able to resolve that and not have to bring it to your attention. But what I would be is looking at, okay, how is our project cost? The construction cost for Redmond or the construction cost for Central or any of the others, how is that looking? We've got a $81 million budget on Central. Are we on track for that? Now, if there's big spikes that we want to share with you, hey, structural steel just went up 50%, something dramatic, right? We'd share that kind of dramatic changes. The fluctuations that are going up and down within the small minutia of the budget, construction cost, we'll manage. We'll keep DPL fully informed of that, but trying to manage it at that level. And I would like to be coming to you with, here is the big picture of where we're at, major categories relative to the budget, but always able to address any questions that you may have of, well, what's the driver of that change? Did cost of lumber go way up again? There's a huge spike a year ago in lumber. I would always want to be prepared to tell you that. I get prepared by in-depth discussions with all of my advisors, right? The cost estimators, the CMGC, my design team. I have a lot of people that help keep me looking smart, prepared, right? So that would be how I'd propose doing it, Ray.
Okay, yeah, that's good. So you would, if there are differences between the estimator and anybody else and what's going on, you would bring us not just the results of what they agreed to at the end, but that there was a difference in why.
Yeah.
Good.
I'll share any of those big issues with you.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we have some suggested language for a motion. Would anyone care to make a motion? I think
I'll
Todd
make-
put it in the chat.
I'll make that motion. I move to award the Deschutes Public Library Cost Estimating Services Contract in support of bond-funded construction projects to JLD Cost Consulting and authorize the library director to sign the finalized contract in the amount of no more than $275,000 and all associated documents.
All right,
I'll
go
second
ahead.
it.
Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
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 All right, opposed? Okay, we have a cost estimator.
All right.
That's.
I have one more item. That you can get to looking at the pretty pictures. So with the Central Library and with ODOT, we had talked about this in the past, that we were negotiating what's called the cooperative Cooperative Improvement Agreement, CIA, and that's a ODOT term for their agreement. And they have two ways of taking your land, right? They just go out and take it through the law, or we agree to a cooperative improvement agreement where we sit down and go through, what land we will transfer to their ownership. And this has to do with the widening of the highway and the roundabout and how that property edge is affected. And so what's in front of you guys is the final agreement that was done with ODOT, although they did give us a little disclaimer that the DOJ could have minor corrections even after we've done all of our rounds, but nothing material to it. But I believe the approval is to allow Todd to enter into this agreement, and it would be the formal transfer of the land from DPL to ODOT. We get compensated for the land at its fair market value. ODOT has a very set process of how they, I was going to say evaluate, but actually determine the value of that land, assess it, of what they will pay for it. And so that will be then funded to DPL. It's used to offset our cost of mitigation measures. So as we develop our library and we generate vehicle trips, it generates what's called, just traffic mitigation measures of how much. So in this case, we're going to pay a percentage of the roundabout cost, because that's where most of our traffic comes in and out of our property is from there. And so we'll get compensated for our land based on a value, and then we will pay our fees for our share of the roundabout based on these traffic mitigation. But that's all laid out in the agreement. So the agreement was reviewed and negotiated by ourselves, deChase Miksis. Brooks Resources was involved in that. And then DPL's legal counsel was involved and went through all of the agreement for our side, as well as the DPL team reviewing that. And so this is the final agreement, basically there for you to approve, to authorize Todd to execute that, and then we'll continue with ODOT in transferring the land formally.
Will we get to see, Greg, will we get to see a plat that says this much land, or here is the land that is deeded to ODOT?
Yeah, there will be a final document that will be created. There's exhibits in there that reference it, and we generally know where it is. They're doing a design build delivery method on the highway improvements. So they have created criteria documents that really define what they believe is call it correct limits, but the final legal document will actually come out of their design build package. And that's where it gets down to the 1/10 of an inch dimension all along there, really fine-tuned. And as we're developing our design, we will also be working with them to make sure that our design marries up to their design, so that where we join them, their property, our property meshes in grades and finishes, how we're going to build the bike path that goes all along the edge of our property. We negotiated to have control of that so that we can blend that into our, library design of the site, versus ODOT would put it right up against the road and make it flat and plain. And we want it to engage with us if people are using it, we want them to come to the library. And so that helped us out there. And then also how we are connecting to the Roble roundabout. We've already had engagement with about what our design is on our property and what we want, have got into this agreement. That they will work with us in making sure that our design is part of their bid documents. And so the documents that we complete in February for city submittal are also going to ODOT that they will use to finalize their design build contract. And so that way it just should mean that we get a better end product in our designs, meeting each other, working together well. And our cost for doing that work will be in their base bid of their competitive bid for the roundabout, which, because we share in that, we want it to be as complete as possible to get the best price.
Excellent.
Okay. Any further questions for Greg about this? I think we have also some suggested language in the chat. Thank you, Todd. If anyone would like to make a motion.
I will, Anne. I move to authorize the library director to sign the cooperative improvement agreement with the Oregon Department of Transportation for the transfer of land between DPL and ODOT and all associated documents.
Okay, do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes.
Right.
All
I
right.
think that covers all of my topics. Unless
Oh,
there's
gee,
any,
Greg, yeah.
only 2 hours, huh?
I know. It's been great chatting with you.
Yes, it has.
You've been
Yeah.
busy.
Yeah,
Well, good.
no, thank you so much for those thorough explanations. I really appreciate the detail with which you take us through each item, the background information that you provide. I think it really gives me confidence in getting my questions answered and coming to good decisions. So we appreciate your diligence and your patience with us.
Well, thank you, and you're very welcome. With that, I'll probably turn it back to Todd and we'll get to start seeing the fun stuff.
Okay, before Todd starts, I want to ask people, do people want to take a quick break before we launch into the conceptual designs?
Yes.
I would.
Yes.
Please.
Please.
Normally I forget about this and it's not good. Okay, well, let's take a 10-minute break. We'll be back in 10 minutes and then we'll resume.
Good, thanks.
Thanks.
Stop video.
Excuse me.
There we go.
Okay. Ray is back. Do we have everybody we need?
Yes, we do.
Okay, great. Okay, Todd, do you want to introduce this section?
Well, we just did all the nuts and bolts of how we're gonna start getting this done, and we get to start looking at some fun stuff about what it'll actually look like. So I'm gonna hand it over to our design team. Ruth and Matt, I think you've all met from a previous meeting, and you may, and maybe this time introduce the rest of your team as well. That'd be great.
Okay, great. Thank you, Todd. So Ruth Baleko, a partner with Miller Hall. It's nice to see all of you again. I'll let Matt introduce himself, and then we'll kind of give you a sense of the huge team that's kind of working on your behalf behind the scenes.
Yeah, Matt Elboris, project manager for Miller Hall. And I actually think most of us have been, are at our desks working furiously on schematic design, but I know John McKay is listening in.
Yeah.
Sometimes, oh, there he is. He's got camera. He can
Wave.
Hi, everyone. John McKay, part of the Miller Hall team. I've met most of you, but very nice to meet the people that I have not yet met. Thank you.
You may see John from time to time walking around Greater Bend because he also has a part-time home in the area. So if you see his doppelganger there, it's because he's spending time at his other house.
Great.
Yeah, we do have a great and sizable team working, all, full-time on your project, in addition to Derek and Scott and folks from Steele Associates. We're excited to have the contractor on board and getting to now add them to this group of really talented professionals working on these bond projects. And I'm assuming you all have looked at the concept deliverable that was submitted. And so we're prepared to kind of go through the highlights of it today for you. And I'll be fairly brief so that we can, spend the time on questions. If that seems like a good place to, does that seem like a good place to begin? Okay.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to share my screen. Hang on. Okay, can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Big picture. So yeah, like I said, that concept document was the culmination of a lot of talented professionals, architects, engineers, consultants work for the past, 2.5 months or so. And there's obviously a lot of technical detail in there, which I won't go through necessarily today. But I think what's really great is kind of what came out of it in terms of your vision for all of the locations across the county. And so I'll touch on kind of each location and where we ended up at the end of concept design. And Matt, feel free to chime in if I forget anything critical. So I think we, in the program, and when we say program, what that means is kind of the list of functional areas in a building. We talk about size, what the space needs to accomplish, what kinds of things need to be in the space for it to work properly. And so that's one of the things you'll see in the document. And we all know that libraries have so many functional and experiential areas in their buildings today. And so it's definitely a place for much, much more than books. And it's a place for families to come together and enjoy things together, or divide up and find very different experiences under one roof. So it might be, growing that love of reading and that lifelong connection to the library that starts when we're young and stays with us. Maybe it's about connecting to technology, learning to use a new piece of equipment or software, things that maybe the average family wouldn't have at home, and connecting to databases and all kinds of things afar. And that definitely translates into areas that could be conducive for classes or training or other special events where maybe you are streaming in content from somewhere far away, or you're recording content that then can be sent out. And so that's a really great feature of libraries today. It really expands the footprint. Oops, had a little bit of a delay there. I think we're hearing more and more, and definitely have spoken about it for all your branches, to think about how creative space can be a real critical piece of these new buildings, where people can come in and do crafts, learn how to do or make or use something they haven't before, or maybe bring their own equipment and come pursue their passions. We know that Deschutes County residents are definitely creative and passionate and curious about the world. And, you know, our job as architects and engineers is to bring all these experiences under one roof and have them exist gracefully together and feel like vibrant, energetic places for those who want vibrance and energy. But then for the folks who want a quiet spot to reflect or study or read or just check out those great views that you have, the library has to do that too. And I think we've talked a lot, and you'll see in the document, about being really fiduciary stewards of the public funds. That's also very much our job here. The taxpayers have put their trust in you in this bond measure, and these buildings need to live up to those generations of expectations, right, and service. And so whether it's making smart use of the land you own, the facilities you own, the use of energy, water, materials, we really need to take great care in the way that we use all of your resources going forward toward this measure. So why don't we start with Sun River, just briefly. And I'm sure if you've looked at the concept document, you're familiar with some of the diagrams that we're using to talk about space. And as we go into the next phase of work, you know, the drawings will start looking more like buildings. You'll see walls and doors and more definition that starts to resemble a building, but this is kind of where we start with these large diagrams. And so at Sun River, really, you know, one thing we talked about in detail was how can we make that entry area, which is wonderful space. You get great daylight in there. It's a tall ceiling. Can we get that space to do more in terms of 24-hour access, maybe more display? And then can we also make it a little bit more visible when you pull in? And so that's that area in light blue that you're seeing in the center. So let's get that to do a little bit more and make it a little bit bigger. And then from there, access to 2 meeting rooms, so increasing that capability. And then thinking about how a 3rd meeting room could be part of the library over here on the lower left, and it could open up into the library for really big events. And then we've moved children's into the area that used to be the staff space. It gets great, you know, it has windows there, but it's also a little lower ceiling, which is really nice for younger library users to kind of bring the scale of the space down. And it also helps to kind of contain their energy and acoustics. So that's a nice bonus there.
So Ruth,
Mm-hmm.
well, as you go through these, it would be helpful if you could say how the meeting rooms, how many people they would accommodate.
Sure. We, I don't know if we did seat counts for each of these meeting rooms, but we did, after concept design finished, we started looking at head counts for Redmond and Bend. So I'm not sure I have the seat counts at the tip of my fingers for the branches, but I know that after this deliverable, we did work on that for the 2 new buildings. So I might need to follow up with you on that, Ray, if that would be okay, just so I don't give you the wrong answer here.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Okay, let's go to Sisters now. You know, Sisters, you know, that community is all about events, right? I mean, Harvest Fair, the Folk Festival, you know, the quilt show, the art shows. I mean, that's their kind of their, you know, renown. And so, you know, part of making this building serve that community better is enhancing the current meeting room, you know, making sure we can use it after hours like you already do, but then thinking about the heart, that light blue area in the center of the building, to be equipped really flexibly. So shelving and furniture on wheels, can we move it out of the way and have you know, more like pop-up programs that could be shorter but happen more frequently, to really give that location much more versatility and capacity to do that. Maybe we incorporate things that allow the art shows to happen and just really provide that kind of support. And then again, the children's area is here to the bottom, enhancing that, adding 2 kind of small tutoring spaces in addition. And then, you know, we're going to talk about it at both Sisters and Lapine. You know, when you enter those buildings, you kind of enter into a long corridor with a lot of doors, but you don't really see into the library at all. And so in both locations, really transforming that immediate kind of moment that you enter the library and making that space inside the vestibule a lot more usable and open.
Ruth, I have a quick question. Will
Sure.
the gas fireplaces at Sun River and Sisters, will they be worked into the design or?
Yeah, the plan was to keep them because to what we've heard is they're very popular. And so we have intended to keep them.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yeah.
Ruth, I have a question on the Sisters. Sisters has 2 outdoor areas, one that's just off the meeting and children's rooms, and then the other one that's in the back that nobody ever uses. Will those be repurposed or changed or incorporated?
The intent is keeping them for sure. And then I think we need to do a deeper dive into how we can get them to be used more frequently. Because each location has commented on wanting to keep the outdoor areas, but then we don't have good data on actual use. And so does that mean we need furniture? Does that mean we need outlets and Wi-Fi? Like what would allow them to be heavily used? So I think we need to do a little bit more digging on that implementation, but the notion is that they will remain.
Okay, okay.
Okay, Lapine, very similar building, but really different community. Again, we talked a little bit about the entry, really opening that up so you kind of don't have to go through that long gauntlet before you get to the library, that you're greeted and kind of welcomed instantly. And then this library, because of its proximity to the schools, has really heavy student use after school. And so thinking about how we can serve that user group really well, you know, the meeting room potentially as a programming suggestion, maybe it really offers, you know, a homework zone after school, and it's really set up to do that, and it's close to the teen area. Maybe we think about the children's here at the south because it's closer to the park that's, you know, right kind of south of the building. And then again, adding some small meeting rooms in addition to the large meeting room. East Bend, and you know, the statistics that come out of this location are amazing. The amount of traffic you get when it's one of your relatively smaller locations, it's you know, it is heavily used. And so our job is to figure out how can it do, you know, even more to serve these users with the available square footage that we have. So we've tackled it in a few ways. First of all, we have expanded the meeting room a little bit, and to make it a little bit easier and better to use, we're going to work on that connection here between children's and the meeting room. We need to solve some acoustics issues that occur. We need to solve kind of the distraction of kids maybe at the glass doors during another program. But it is still helpful to have the meeting room kind of near there. So if there is story time, that they can capitalize on that adjacency. And then the other thing we've done is, you know, right now when you come in, the 2 vestibules kind of send you in 2 different directions. And so there's extra space devoted to kind of traffic path. And we'd like to grab some of that back and make it more useful for display and kind of, you know, right when you enter, you're in the hot reads, you're in the holds, you know, any of those kind of special displays that are occurring. And so keeping the 2 existing vestibules where they are, but rotating the one from the main parking lot so that both entries kind of empty and land you in this area that's light blue. And that'll be all display, welcome, and, kind of the new and upcoming items. And then it really allows us to make the fiction and nonfiction area, as well as kind of technology and working space, a little bit more efficient, and we can accomplish more because we aren't trying to circulate people, especially because we get that kind of traffic jam at the elbow of the building right now. And so I think there's some nice improvements we can make to get this building to really do it more. We've also added two small tutoring rooms and another meeting room. So really opening that up for public use also in the lower right.
So Ruth,
Mhm.
what do you mean by tech area?
What we mean is areas for computer use, for printing. Maybe you bring your laptop and sit at work tables in order to do your own work. We're trying to make sure there's kind of a really ample zone for that kind of activity, as well as sitting and reading and browsing. Did that answer your question, Ray?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Downtown Bend, we're going to see a lot of new public space here because there's quite a bit of systems operations that work out of this building that will be relocated to the new central. So this library really sees a nice amount of area turned back to public use. And so this is a diagram of level 1. The entry is on the right-hand side. And, children's will keep it and enlarge it slightly in its location. But what's really great is the center of the building, the other way, going to the north toward town, all of that space will be vacated and will turn into a large co-working collaboration area. So when you enter the building, from this renovated entry space, you'll be able to see through the whole building and really see kind of a lot of the action. We're also able to expand by about 50% the current meeting room and solve the after hours access issues so that space can really, again, be really useful for your community. And when we go up to level 2, we're going to keep the fiction and nonfiction collection there. But what we are going to be able to do is really capitalize on that wonderful daylight up there, the places that people gravitate to sitting along the edge. And we are able to grab more space up here. So the area kind of up here where my cursor is, currently that is staff space that will be relocating to the new central. And so we're creating, teens really get their own kind of designated spot. And also or one divisible, but 2 creative spaces that can be used for any kind of, programming or craft time or, coming in and making and doing. And that's in addition to the meeting room downstairs. We've also grabbed another meeting room and some small tutoring rooms here associated with the law collection. And then downtown, Redmond, we are going in front of the city council next week and met with their urban renewal advisory committee also, I think about a week ago. Where we are currently with this project is, this is the current block where Redmond Library is. And the gray area is the kind of preliminary footprint of the building on that site. We get a much more efficient layout on your site by putting all of the parking kind of in one location. We get a lot more area for landscape and building. And then we have that kind of civic patio that we talked about on the south and west, kind of facing the neighborhood, facing the city hall. And then I think we're really excited about the drive-up service window that is shown on the east side of the property. And you pull in off of Deschutes, head north, and you're able to drop off a book or interact with a staff person at a service window. So I think that'll be a great convenience service for patrons in Redmond. So I'll explain what we're seeing here. This is a diagram of level 1. So again, we have that parking entry to the north, the kind of civic street side entry to the south. But either way, you end up in the same kind of heart of the building where a lot of the exciting display, whatever the hot reads or notable events are going on, you're really going to see those materials there. And then this first floor is kind of our high energy floor. So we have the kids area to the right, and then we have a creative and co-working as well as meeting spaces on the left. So you can imagine coming in here and there's meetings happening in the upper left. There's this, people are coming in to do creative collaboration efforts on the lower left. And the meeting spaces also would be available after hours.
What do in the meeting space, you have 2 arrows opposing each other? What do those mean?
Yeah, great question. Thank you. Those are showing how we could divide the meeting room into 3 portions if we wanted to. So it could act as 3 separate venues or 1 large venue. And so we'll continue to test if that is useful or if it wants to be broken up differently or at all.
And where are the entryways and walls in there?
We so during this phase, we show things in kind of diagrammatic areas, and going into this next phase of design is when we start showing walls and doors and equipment and furniture. We want to get the jigsaw puzzle pieces right before we get too detailed. So I'm going to point to the doors right now, Ray. So when you come in, you've parked to the north, you're going to come in right here where it says entry. And if you've walked along the street or coming from Deschutes, you're going to come in right here where it says entry. And in this next, phase of work, we're going to start testing how do walls and divisions of space, windows, that sort of thing, how do those best work?
Now, what does S and S mean in meetings?
Oh, yeah, we have started experimenting with the idea that we might have like little rooms that are for recording or filming or some kind of small, we call them like little small rooms that have acoustic properties such that you could do a slightly different activity in there with specialized equipment, podcast, recording, filming, maybe maybe you're recording yourself doing something that then is streamed. And we need to just test out how much space do we have for that, but also for all the storage that we need. And so that's one of the exercises that the team will be working on here, and showing the library different ways we could configure that area so that it can really accomplish all the things that people are hoping.
And what are those gray areas?
Those are the storage areas that we talked about. Okay, I'm going to go to level 2. Oops, here we go. So on the upper floor, so at this, we talked about the first floor being kind of high energy activities, events, kids. Upstairs, different atmosphere. We've got fiction, nonfiction. We have study, maybe quieter reading and work areas, and we have a roof terrace. So really, we're kind of organizing the building by kind of making sure that people who want to come for the vibrance really can find that. And then people who are coming for a little quieter moment, they can find that upstairs. So really starting to zone for the acoustics.
You had 2 teen areas, is that right?
Yeah, we're still experimenting with where teen wants to go. And in a lot of meetings, we switch it back and forth because there's merit to teens being, some teens are really, they come to do their homework, to do their, team project, and they're being, they're coming for that kind of a work atmosphere. And then some teens are coming because they want to do gaming and robotics and crafts and really more active things. And I'm not at all kidding in that often we switch teens back and forth in our buildings between meetings, because we do see amongst the group, we do see merit. So I think we're still testing locations for where that should be successful.
Or you might have just the 2 teen areas?
I don't think we want to do two. I'll save you the passionate debate that has occurred in some of the library meetings. Teens are a really interesting group because they are all of those things, right? They are neither kids nor adults, and they are a really great spectrum in between. So they're a fun group to design for. And I'm really
As
glad
we can attract them in.
That's right. Yes. And, at Downtown Bend, because of the size of the building, it's a 2-story building, it's 40,000 square feet. We are able to explore a wood structure here. The code allows us to do that. And we thought that would be a really great way to bring warmth, to bring kind of the craft of using a wood structure where you see the connections, you see the members, and it's part of the Northwest industry. And so we have been working with our engineers to work on a wood structure. So you would look up and see a wood deck above you. You're going to see wood beams, columns, trusses. And we really think that could be a lovely way to also kind of start to speak to the history, the warmth of the community, and really bring a tactile kind of component to the library interior. We've started just kind of doing some interesting sketches about how we could use maybe some masonry. By masonry, I mean brick or stone that starts to speak to a lot of the buildings we see in Redmond, let alone the city hall. Do we have a big wood kind of overhang that gives us some outdoor space for programs or just to sit and read? Can we express the structure so that you see how the building goes together? So I think you're going to start in the next, weeks and months, you're going to see us continue to explore how this building looks and feels, both from the outside and the inside. And we started, again, these are views. The top view is if I was had my back to the park. I'm looking north toward that entry area, the children's area, maybe with some, nice little window seats to the right, but then that big kind of creative co-working area to the left with lots of daylight and visibility. And then maybe the drawing on the bottom is when I'm in the parking lot and I'm walking toward that entry, really clear, visible entry. You're seeing the meeting rooms with their windows, but then knowing also that we have the staff space that wants a little different kind of visibility. So again, these are very, very rough drafts. You're going to see, more iteration from us going forward, but just to give a kind of an early glimpse of things that we're exploring.
How does the square footage on these conceptual designs compare to the present building?
The current building, I think, is in the 20,000 square foot neighborhood. So this is roughly double. And I think we're well aware of some of the really wonderful history that exists not only in Redmond, but at this site. So are there things that we can repurpose? Are there things that we can speak to with our use of wood, brick, and potentially some salvaged items? Okay, I'm gonna take a little breath and pause. Is everyone ready to go on to Central? Okay, I'll take that as a yes. So I think, this is I don't know if any of you checked out the videos that we worked on this past week, but really orienting, the community to where all of your locations in Bend are. And then the Central obviously is up north. And then this is a diagram you've seen before, but we shared it with the concept deliverable and the videos in that, we look at all the influences that bear upon a site, and it starts to guide us for how we place things, where we place things, so that we're capitalizing on the assets of the site, like the solar orientation, the topography, the breezes, the views, but also really aware of where, other things may be, like, the neighborhood to the left, the retail to the right. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
On that, if you go back.
Sure.
When I saw this, I went, is that a railroad now that I don't know about?
No, well, no, we are not putting in a railroad. That is the bike trail. That Greg, yeah. So and you're going to see something that's more illustrative here in a second. This is very, really diagrammatic. So it probably wasn't clear at first blush, but that is actually the bike trail. And I'm going to show, yeah, oh, sorry. I didn't mean to
I
speak.
might suggest you do something other than something that looks like the railroad track.
Good point. Yeah, to my knowledge, we're not bringing the railroad through.
I hope not.
So that diagram was done very early, Ray, but you're going to see now a much more illustrative plan that maybe is a little bit more intuitive to read. And what I'm going to do here is on each one here, each image, we're going to turn on different things. So one at a time, you see the different kind of site features. If I were in the room, I'd point to them with my hand, but this is an easy way to do it when we're on screens.
Is this taking into account the land swap?
Yes, this does show the reconfigured property to the north, and it does show kind of the way the roundabout will kind of tuck into your site here as it enlarges toward the intersection. And we'll continue to work with the engineers so that we always have the current drawing that they're working from, which I'm sure will continue to evolve. So what we're seeing here, you're really familiar with, I'm sure. Robo Lane, the roundabout, Britta Street on the left, Jameson on the bottom, and looking at a really generously landscaped parking area to the north with a really kind of giving the building the southern portion of the site as well as the outdoor space. And I'm going to kind of walk through different pieces here for you now. If you're driving, you're probably going to come and turn in on Britta where that magenta arrow is, and cars can pull up, and if you're dropping off someone, you'll drop them off near that pink dot, or you'll circle around and pull into the parking lot. If you've come not by the railroad, but by bike, you're going to use that dotted magenta line on the right, which is the proposed configuration of the bike trail. The area shown in orange is a large entry plaza, both covered and uncovered. So we can really think about different conditions that'll occur, different events, different weather, sun, shade. And I think what's really great about that is it's facing the building. When you get dropped off, you see it right away. The front door is undercover. And if there are events, you kind of see them happening right as you approach. So you can, see what's happening. There are two, sorry.
Who's responsible for the construction of the bike path?
I might need Todd to jump in.
We are, it's
That's
part of the bike path will be constructed on our site, and we will be constructing it in coordination with ODOT.
And where will it extend to, north and south?
That is a good question that I think we're putting together a diagram, but I think as part of the whole Highway 20 kind of widening and installation of these roundabouts, there will be a connected bike path along the highway.
ODOT will be having bike paths along the highway, and we requested that we design our own rather than having what they would put there. It gives us a little more land, and it allows us to have a little more control.
And when is ODOT going to complete their part of the bike paths?
When they're doing the roundabouts and the widening of Highway 20.
Yeah, good question. I think it's a great, a great connectivity piece for the library. So 2 book drops. One, if you come up to the building during operating hours or after hours, we'll have book drops here at the front door shown in magenta. And then we also, like Redmond, we'll have a drive-up service window where you can interact with a staff member or just drop a book off. So again, that really helpful convenience for this new central library. Now, I don't know if you can tell, I'm going to describe what we're seeing. I've zoomed in now to just show the building portion of the site. So I've cropped down the larger portions of your parcel, and we're just looking at the first floor superimposed over that site plan that we just looked at. So again, that covered outdoor space shown here, close to the parking lot. We have, again, the book drops that we talked about shown in orange. And when you come in, I'm going to describe the light blue area because it's actually an amalgamation of many things. So when you enter, there is something for everyone. But in addition, we have the event spaces over to the left. And the intention is that those are available during the day, but then after hours use also. The light blue area will have a lot of the really unique and different collections that speak to things that you as a library have that many other libraries don't have, like the library of things, the book club kits, the maps, the curriculum crates, the story time to go, like all these really interesting collections that often people don't know about and they want to be displayed differently. We will try to put all of those down here in this light blue area. In addition to hot new reads, in addition to displays relative to an event that's going on or an author that's in town or a holiday. So really you enter this light blue area and right from the start, you are in the library and you are really immersed in anything and everything that the library has, for you. And then when you go upstairs, I'm gonna walk you up here. Next floor, children's display, creative space. We will probably debate if the teens are on this floor or the next floor for the next few months. So the next floor it has a lot of that energy. It has the ability to spill out on the terraces. And then again, once you go up to the third floor, we start to get a little quieter. So fiction, nonfiction, display, study spaces. There's probably access to technology on both floors. So in the children's and the creative area on level 2, but then also up here on level 3, so that it's really kind of immersed in the library and not just kind of one central spot. So I think we're pretty excited about how we're really creating kind of 3 different environments or experiences within this one building. I think you've seen these views, but the view here is driving toward that new roundabout, so heading north. You're seeing that first floor, the kind of market of everything in the dark portion, kind of nestled into the topography and the knoll. The upper 2 floors are rotated to grab that view and to create those porches. From the roundabout, you're also seeing that really dramatic entry, that really dramatic kind of destination statement, and that event portion of the building with the terrace above nestled into the earth. And then here, imagine you've gotten out of your car at the drop-off. You're walking toward the front door that's undercover, and you're seeing the event space to the right. So you're probably seeing, some really cool activity or program happening, and then heading toward that front door there undercover with 2 floors of library collection and activities and people overhead. Maybe I'll speak for Chantal unless Todd or others want to chime in, but we have got some great engagement well underway, but then also continuing to be scheduled. So as I was listening to this board meeting, I actually saw 3 invites come in for Chantal for next Tuesday. And so we've already been meeting with the group of organizations on the top, you guys included. The special interest organizations are the ones that we've started, and we're going to continue booking over the next few weeks. We already met with Ability last week, and I think the ones that I saw on my calendar for next week that Matt and I will do, maybe Boyd Acres, I think we got the arts and culture, and I think there was a third one. And then I think it will be into 2022 before we start scheduling the individual community meetings for each of the branches. So stay tuned on that. And I don't know if Todd, if you wanted to add any specificity to this. Yes, sir.
Yeah, on the central library, you said you did make an estimation of the capacity on the event room.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Right now we are tracking for 2 rooms of a minimum 150 people each. And we're also testing, so that's if you're there and you're looking at a speaker program, because you can sit kind of in rows of seats. We're also testing, if you have like a dinner event, and you're seated at kind of 8-person round tables, or if you're doing a big, like a training program where people are sitting at kind of linear tables. So we're testing different seating capacities, but the minimum target was 2 rooms of 150 people each.
Okay, and is there an elevator there?
Yes, absolutely. There will be multiple elevators in this building.
And Ruth, I was interested, and I assume that it's just level of detail at this point, but there will be smaller meeting rooms as well in the central library, varying sizes, I assume.
Absolutely. And you're absolutely right, Anne, that you have to kind of bear with us here as we begin, because things don't have all the level of detail yet, even though our minds are craving them. And so
Right.
you will start seeing that increased level of detail now that we know we have the big pieces in the right spots. Now it makes sense to dig in and add, more granularity. So that's coming.
Okay, I assumed so, but in the smaller branches, they were shown, and I assumed that was the reason for this.
Yeah, always good to ask, because sometimes we forget to explain things that seem obvious in our own head.
Right.
Let me ask you about the children's room on the second floor.
Mhm.
How would that impact young parents coming in with their toddlers, accessing like story time and the pre-story times?
Yeah.
They're really young. They come in with strollers.
Yep. So
They're not all going to be able to take the elevator, are they?
yeah, there absolutely. They will have a couple ways to get there. We'll have multiple elevators, and we'll also have a big kind of open stair that you see right from the front door and can head up. So there'll be multiple ways to head up to story time.
So there are other libraries that have their children's section on the second floor, and no problems with parents bringing their toddlers up there,
Yes.
walking up the staircase.
Yes. Or the elevator. I think, the common situation with libraries is everything wants to be on the first floor. And we know that everything can't be on the first floor, even though that's, and so we have to make decisions about what is the highest and best use of the first floor, and then do our best job kind of laying it out from above. But I've worked on quite a few libraries where the children's area was not appropriate on level 1 because we needed to accomplish other things. Any other questions? Maybe I'll stop sharing and we can look at faces. How's that? I know you had a couple other agenda items after this, so I also want to be respectful of what you need to accomplish after this. I'm sure we could talk about images and imagine pieces of these libraries kind of for all afternoon, because it's pretty exciting what you have planned.
Yeah, Ruth, I kind of wanted to follow up on Bunny's comment.
Okay.
I know overall, I mean, I really like these designs, and I like the concepts that are put forward. But I really want to, and I know that this is detail for next phases, but capitalizing on those outdoor spaces, I think not just from usage in the past, but what is possible and what could really expand the vitality of our entire site for the smaller branches and for, I know downtown Bend is fairly limited, but we haven't really made good use of that area around the libraries in the past, and it's beautiful. I mean, they're put in very pretty places. So anything that we can do to bump that up and expand our flexibility and what we can be doing outside and giving people a chance to relax and or gather is great. And the other plug that I wanted to put in is one of the things in all of our design conferences and things like that we've been viewing virtually. So now we're like big experts, right?
Yes, and great. We need you.
We're the concept of after hours holds pickup, lockers,
Yes.
things like that. And that, especially with the after hours components. And I know staff has been putting in a ton of research on this.
Yeah.
Not only in remote locations, but at our libraries themselves. And I think that's going to be a really big boost for convenience for
Oh, yeah.
our users.
Yes, we, I personally have a keen appreciation for the after hours use because as a commuter, well, until, a year and a half ago, I couldn't get to the library because I would commute home and I could only be an after hours user. And that's the way it is for a lot of people. And so we've started working on some really great ways to integrate that ideally, and if we can pull it off in all the locations. It just seems like that's the level of convenience that we now expect to live with. So I think we've got some good opportunity for that.
Cool. I
Yeah.
look forward to seeing more.
I also want to touch on the outdoor space for exactly the reason that you and Bunny brought up. One of the questions that we're asking the public on the website is, if there was outdoor space at your branch, what would you use it for? So I think we're going to get some great data over the next few weeks that can help steer us because it'll come from your user groups.
And possible use of the outdoor space in the winter time or when it's
Yeah.
cold. How do you use it? What do you do with
Yeah.
it during those times?
Yeah.
And any kind of cafes or coffee shops. I
Yeah,
think
that
that's
is-
always.
Yeah, that has come up, and I think we're really excited. We did not provide multiple choice questions for the community because then we get them choosing from our suggestions. And so we asked, a series of open-ended questions that allow them to really respond in ways that we wouldn't think of. So I think it'll be exciting to start getting that data into December.
Mhm.
Yeah, I didn't touch on that, but I really thought that online portion was really well done and very inviting and engaging as far as like really drawing the public in to say, hey,
Oh, good. Well,
give
yeah,
us your comments. And I particularly did like the open-ended nature of
good.
the feedback form.
Oh, good.
Because I think you're going to get a wide range of ideas that may be things that we
Yeah.
hadn't thought of. So I
Yeah.
really enjoyed that. And I like the aspect when we were soliciting public feedback before, one of the best sessions that I went to was where a family showed up with their kids.
Oh,
And the kids had a lot of ideas. And,
Yeah.
We're designing facilities for them. So this is something that families can join in and parents can ask their kids to contribute ideas. And I think it's really an inclusive, convenient way for people to comment and review things.
Thank you. Well, and credit to the e-services folks at DPL because we gave them the raw material, but then they, put it all on the website and got it up and running. So kudos to them.
Right.
Great. I'll turn it over, Todd.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
This is so exciting to see this progress.
Yeah.
And we really appreciate you guys taking the time out for this meeting.
Great. We will let you have the rest of your meeting and see you soon. Thank you.
Okay, bye.
All right. Okay. Very, very interesting. Next up, we have financial planning and budgeting for our monitoring report. Todd, do you want to lead this discussion?
Yeah, but first I want to talk about ego and hubris. For the first time in 4 years, I finally got all the dates right on this form. And I just noticed that I didn't put today's date correctly. So it's so close. Really, just for financial planning and budgeting, this really is all about the budget process. So it's kind of interesting that we look at this in October. Really, we could probably sit and look at this in July and say, how did we do? But a couple of things that it really highlights is, am I building the budget based on board priorities? And I think at least in my mind, it's pretty clear that we have a very good process that the board sets priorities. And that shows up directly into the budget, the type of projects we do. Does it have enough information to give credible projections of revenue and expenses, cash flow? And yes, and my, again, estimate, it does. We're very clear about where we are with our capital outlay and our reserves. And now with the new bond budgets as well, that's also in there. And then a very important one is that it plans for that we have funds to provide services in multiple years going forward. And the board has a very good policy on that, that we keep a 17% balance carried forward. At this point, we're, because of our new buildings coming up, we've been keeping that number pretty high. And so we're 47% above carried forward as opposed to 17%. So we're well within that limitation from the board. And so at the end of all that, my interpretation is that we are in compliance with the financial planning and budgeting executive limitations policy. Any questions?
No. If not, I would entertain a motion.
I make a motion that we approve the financial planning and budgeting report and policy.
That we are in compliance.
Compliance. Yes.
Right.
Sorry,
Okay.
I had a motion all set up for you.
Oh, good. I need it. Okay. Wait, I'll rephrase that.
Okay.
I move that the library is in compliance with the district's financial planning and budgeting executive limitations policy.
Very well put, Bunny.
Oh, thank you.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion passes. Okay. So we're on to library news. We have done a lot today.
Yeah.
What library news, we've got a lot going on. So a couple of things I want to highlight is the fact that we have our vaccine clinics, which started out at downtown Bend, and we now have that in downtown Bend, Redmond, Lapine, and Sisters. And we estimate we've probably had over 2,500 people
Oh,
get shots through those. It's really taking off. Lately, we had over 300, I think we had about 360 people last Wednesday at the downtown Bend Library.
Wow.
Which is our busiest day. We had been averaging about 100 to 150 at the beginning. With the booster shots, that's really taking off. If you haven't seen it, watching people lined up around our building on Wednesdays is just an amazing sight. So we're proud of that, that we have a chance to help improve our community and hopefully get us through this
yeah.
pandemic. So that's kind of an exciting partnership that we've had with the Department of Health. We did talk a little bit about the fact that we have online chances for people to go in, watch videos and make comments on the buildings. And we're really highlighting that right now. We've got billboards up. We're about to send out mailers to every address in Deschutes County to encourage people to go in, because we really want the feedback. This is not just a checkbox that we're doing to say we ask people. And that piece I'm really excited about, especially the chance to get all ages in there. This is probably one of our best ways to reach kids, than as opposed to having a focus group in a library where maybe one shows up. So that's a big one. And just a couple of quick things. We have expanded our library of things. It's now in all of our branches. And along with that, we're expanding our game collection. And coming soon, probably in the next week or so, we will have the hotspots ready and out there. So I'll send you an update when those are up there. We've got them all set and we just got to finalize a few things and then they're going to be out there.
Great.
And then I just have to highlight that for all of the important work we do, you never know what's going to hit with people. And we just had a program on Bigfoot that we're all kind of watching, because right now, after 2 weeks, we're up to 29,000 people have watched it.
Oh,
That's amazing.
So you never know what's going to take off. So
That was kind of predictable though, Todd, not quite that level of interest, but you knew it was gonna be a hot one.
yes, we're gonna have a Bigfoot playing pickleball, and that's gonna blow away all records. So that's our number one, is the pickleball.
That's hysterical.
Yeah, so those are our updates.
Todd, what about the kiosks things that we were testing out? Any news on that?
Yeah, we are still, there's a couple of things we're still in the process of. One is looking at and researching the library vans.
Yes.
To go out. And so we're right in the middle of that. We, just to give a heads up, that we may or may not have that done by the end of the fiscal year. And then the kiosk piece is one that we're also kind of closely watching. Kind of our biggest realization was how big they are and how heavy they are. That the idea that you could just plop it down somewhere and have it working and then maybe move it again, probably not going to happen. So we really have to be kind of watching exactly where we put it. We're also thinking about how we could design some of these things into the new buildings as well. Kind of that after hours thing we were just talking about.
Right. This is almost like a, standalone ATM type of thing when you think about it. So finding parking lot space in where people are going to be, or, along, I don't know. I mean, there's lots of possibilities for locations.
So we're definitely still in the research phase of those two projects.
Hey,
Okay.
Todd, we did try one time the library inside that grocery store in Tumalo, was it?
Terrebonne, yes.
Terrebonne, and that didn't work very well. Now, what would be the difference between the kiosk and that?
Well, that we learned some great lessons from that. So one has kind of looking for where there's actual demographics, or we want to make sure they're actual people that actually are using it. It's not a low use area, which that turned out to be. And then really just, that's the biggest piece, making sure it's a place where you actually get traffic. So that's a good example of a very small community. And then in that case, a small community, there was actually, most of the people that came in there were from Crooked River Ranch, which weren't even part of our system.
Right.
So that's kind of the big one, really looking for something that has more of a high impact for us.
The Flyberry is doing well.
The Flyberry, we've kind of been struggling with that a little bit. Because of COVID, we had a big period where people weren't flying. So we're kind of in flux with that. We're still watching, it's still there. But we were literally about a week away from starting our second Flyberry at St. Charles when COVID hit. So
Oh, that's a great site.
But prior
Yes.
to COVID, how was the Flyberry actually doing?
I don't have the exact numbers on that for you, so I can get that. And we're having a quick meeting in 2 weeks. So I'll get some good numbers for you on the library for next time.
It'd be interesting to know. High traffic area.
I know I picked up a book last time I flew out, so.
Yeah, it's kind of an unusual, I mean, I don't think it's necessarily representative of what a kiosk would do,
Right.
because it's a very people are there for a very specific reason. But yeah, it always seemed, whenever I've flown out, it seems like there are people around looking at it and considering, and but I think St. Charles that's a great idea. People are hanging out, they need something to read, they need a little distraction.
I may hold off your information on library till December, because Emily's going to be coming and talking about our collections, and she's a big driver behind that. So there you go, Emily. There's a little teaser to what you're going to be talking about in December.
Excellent.
All right.
Very good. Yeah.
Review coming attractions.
Yeah.
Well, foundation news, we're buzzing along. We have, now I don't have the dates, so I'm negligent, but I will get those for you before at the next meeting. But we will be having the unveiling of next year's novel idea book in early December. I don't have the exact date on that.
If Chantal's logged in, I bet she could tell you.
Chantal, can you help?
And I've got it on my calendar.
I probably have it on mine too. I should look here.
Yes. Hold on 1 second. It's December. Oh my gosh, my calendar just sounds strange, but it is December 5th at 4 p.m.
Okay, Sunday, 4 p.m.
Yes.
Okay.
Is it going to be online again?
Yes.
Okay. So it's a very interesting and exciting book. So I know you'll all want to attend the online event because it's quite the deal. And if you haven't been to the real life one, hopefully we can get back to doing those, because it's one of the best parties I go to every year.
Say, Ann,
yes.
how many people do we have in attendance attended the novel idea last year? You remember?
Chantal?
Oh, it was over 8,500 people attended the novel idea, the main events and the programs. Are you asking that or the unveiled event?
No, the main events and the programs with novel idea.
Yeah, it was around 8,500 and 9,000.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. And
yeah,
we're hoping to, sorry, Ann, just real quick, we're hoping to have the novel idea, the main event in May would be in person. So that's what we're striving for. So.
Can we have hybrid?
You can have hybrid. We've been doing that a lot, but it would be best to probably just, I mean, I know a lot, yes, you can though. Yes, you can have both.
Yeah, I'm always out of country when you have it. It's like, good.
Yeah, so, and we're also working on author for the coming year. And we've got some exciting people that we're in the process of talking to. So that will be announced in a while. And we're looking for sponsorships to help pay for that program. And so the foundation board is hard at it. They're busy.
So when will it be announced to the author are?
We're hoping by mid-November, because we
Okay.
want to do an announcement right before the holiday season. So people buy tickets for loved ones and friends for the holidays.
Great.
And this author season will be all online, unfortunately, but it's just really it makes the most sense to be able to manage it the best is online.
Yep.
But, you know, we hope to be getting back to live or hybrid meetings soon. So,
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's it for the foundation. Self-review of the meeting. Cynthia, do you want to go first?
Sure, I will. Very busy meeting, lots of information. I really appreciate all the time that Greg puts into his reports, and I personally feel like just having Greg, just having the owner's reps really helps me understand. If I was to meet with all those individual people, I wouldn't know what the heck to ask or understand it. And so Greg really makes it much more understandable for me. And so I really appreciate that.
Okay. Anne?
I have to unmute myself.
Yeah.
So no, I thought it was a good meeting. It was really nice to be able to tie the creative design into what Greg has been talking about, because it's really kind of starting to come together. And I know prior going through the board packet, I had some questions on the text amendment and the whole ODOT process. And those questions were answered through Greg's report. So again, I appreciate that. But I think the important part for me was the tying of the design into all the logistics and the background coming together. So good meeting.
Okay, great. Ray?
No, I think it's a very good meeting. Greg covered a lot of territory, coherent, understandable. All the questions I had asked, we had sensible answers to. We have better understanding of what's going on with the CMGC process and with our budgeting. And most importantly, who's going to be monitoring costs and who's going to be monitoring for really changing construction conditions in the entire world, practically. My concern is China starts building again and we're toast. There's going to be shortages everywhere. But he did a fine job covering that. Feel confident in the design team, the construction team we have, our DPL management team, doing a good job. Keep it up. I don't want to see us on the front page of the bulletin. So you're doing a great job for us. And I think financial planning and budgeting has always been number one. Todd's doing a very good job of that, and keeping us solvent.
Okay, thank you. And Bunny?
I agree with everyone else that Greg's doing a great job of explaining things. But like all of you, I really appreciated the design. That's the exciting, fun part. So I thought it was laid out well. We had to go through this more boring nuts and bolts stuff with Greg, and then we could get to the excitement of seeing some designs. And I'm very positive going forward with this project.
Okay, thank you. It's always good to go last because I can just say same as everyone else, basically. I mean, I really do appreciate Greg's thoroughness and his attention to detail and his ability to answer all of our questions. And he's very accessible so that he makes those questions part of the process and not, I feel like I can ask whatever questions I have. Yeah, and I think the combination of the CGMC and the independent cost consultant and all of these things working together gives me assurance that we're proceeding in a fiscally prudent manner, because this is a large amount of money and we do need to do a good job making sure it's spent well and effectively. And I like the part about being able to have multiple people verifying costs so that we can head off problems before we get too far down the road. So that's all good, and the designs are exciting. I think the public engagement portion of this is really exciting and has been well done. And I think the additional efforts that Chantal has done to get the word out to the public, to publicize this effort so that people know about it, and you know, maybe people that might not have commented will comment. So I think it's going to really give us an opportunity to reach everybody in the community and hear what their ideas for these new exciting facilities. So yeah, it's exciting times, and we did a lot of work today. So thank you all for your hard work and your efforts. This is really getting down into a lot of detail, but it's important detail for us to know what's going on. And I feel like we've got a lot done today, so it's been great. So anything else? Or I think we're ready to adjourn.
I had one more thing. Kudos to, I guess, Chantal or the team that puts the newsletter together. This one's really good. I thought it was an excellent newsletter.
I did too. As a matter of fact, I thought it was great. There's just so many exciting things. And that goes out to how many people, Chantal?
We're around 34,000 right now.
That's awesome.
And I have to acknowledge Tina Davis. She's the one who pulls it all together and does the layout, graphics, and writing. She does an amazing job. And in that newsletter, if you also noticed, we have a fun activity that we're trying to draw people in, which is to create their own library, and until November 30th. And that's where we're hoping to get a lot of the kids and teens involved. And they'll be submitting that into us, and then we'll be passing that along to the architects, as well as putting them up possibly around the libraries, at least online on the website, etc.
You answered my question, because I was going to ask you as soon as I thought of it. I said, are these linked? Because this is a great idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we'll come up with some pretty exciting things, I imagine.
Yes, we hope so.
Yeah, no, that's great. So the one thing I did want to mention before we adjourn is, does the November 10th date work for everybody?
Yes.
Wait a minute.
Yep.
Got it on my schedule.
Okay.
And then I think Greg mentioned something about December 14, he said, and I didn't catch it enough to write it down. Is there something December 14? I know the 11th is a work session. So we have the 10th and 11th.
Wait,
Right.
the 11th of November is a work
Yes.
session.
Yeah.
November 11th, yeah.
And
Right,
10th of
so we have
November
our
is-
library board meeting on the 10th, the work session on the 11th, and then our December meeting would be the 8th.
8th, okay.
Right.
For some reason, I heard him say December 14th something, and I didn't catch it.
Okay, I didn't notice that. So, okay. Well, we'll look forward to seeing everybody in a couple of weeks.
Very soon.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Great meeting.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.